I'm Dave Funk. As you know, I'm the president of the Iowa Firearms Coalition. And Michael Ware will not make it with us this evening, our chairman. He's got another event he has to do. I've got Suzanne and Scott from the NRA, and I'll open with a quick prayer. Our Heavenly Father, please watch over us as we meet tonight and guide us and to always walk with your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. As I said, it's myself. Nathan Gibson's on here also as a panelist. He's our vice president. And I will hand this over to Suzanne to open up with your our field rep notes for things that are going on and what to expect here.
Good evening, everybody. Again, thanks for your patience as we got started. Just a quick update from the NRA-ILA Grassroots Division. Our focus for this month has been promoting the 2 upcoming events we have in Iowa. We have on February 23rd, we are hosting an NRA-ILA Town Hall meeting and grassroots meeting. This will be at the Machine Shed in Urbandale. And then, of course, we're doing everything we can. We'll be joined by, of course, NRA staff, myself, Scott Jones, IFC leadership will be there. Any legislators on hand to really give some insights about the legislative session and just hear from everybody who's working hard there in Des Moines for everybody. And then, of course, we'll be promoting IFC's Second Amendment Day at the Capitol. We're excited about that. I'm excited to be out in Iowa again. We've got emails going out. We've got text messages going out. We'll be sending more of those out, and we appreciate, you know, everybody duplicating and multiplying those efforts to get more people out to these events. So keep an eye out for messages, emails, and text messages. Also, the NRA-ILA Grassroots Division has been hosting monthly webinar workshops. And in case you've missed that, we'll be sure to make sure everybody on this call and others get the links to those. Last month, we hosted a webinar workshop on NRA's online activism resources, digital activism for the Second Amendment. It's changing every single day. We have quite a fight on our hands to get information out there. That was last month. The upcoming one will be on February 17th. In the days of COVID and limited access to lawmakers, we're going to be talking about what are the best practices and strategies on how to make your voice heard. At NRA-ILA, we have a couple of our lobbyists and state directors who actually served as previous legislators. So they'll be joining us and providing some insight in how to do that. So we're really excited. That's February 17th. I'll make sure we get the invite link out to everybody if you'd like to join us for that. Again, this is a series we'll be doing monthly for this year. And then lastly, we are really excited about the students at Iowa State University. They have, in the throes of a pandemic, were able to formalize an official NRA chapter on campus of students for the 2A. And they are, Daniel Eisen is working on that. He's a great student. He's very passionate and ambitious. Leading students there, they've done some great outreach, and so we'll be utilizing them as well. So other than that, the grassroots side is keeping busy. We did a lot of outreach in 2020 in Iowa, and now we're going back and we're looking through the metrics and the data that we gathered during the 2020 election cycle. We're employing our research division in ILA to look at that data to see what worked, what didn't work for grassroots engagement in Iowa, what was great, what we should do again. We're always preparing for the next election cycle. So that's what the grassroots side is working on. And I look forward to being back in Iowa in a couple weeks and seeing many of you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. I want to hand this off to Scott now. And oh, by the way, before I hand it to Scott, Suzanne, we will also get those events listed up on Facebook as you forward those over to me on our Facebook page and on the Iowa Firearms Coalition webpage. Anyway, Scott, you're not in town this week. You were here all last week and the week before. We've got a lot accomplished. I'd like to have you kind of kick off with that, what we've done so far with your help and IFCs, and Richard Rogers, our lead, really is our only lobbyist, our full volunteer lobbyist, one of the most effective ones up there. And on a dollar and cents basis, it's off the charts how effective he is. Anyway, Scott, go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate the introduction. Sorry I missed you in the Capitol today. They've been off to a fast start this year in the Capitol, obviously with COVID cutting the session short last year and some uncertainty leading into the 2020 elections. The legislators were pretty antsy to get back into the Capitol, and they were moving fast. I think the second bill heard on the House floor was Senate Joint Resolution 7, which, as you all know, was the Freedom Amendment. Iowa being one of 6 states that doesn't have that to keep firearms protection in their state constitution. So that's been a multi-year fight. Dave will touch on that a little bit later, but we got that done across the legislative finish line. We've got plenty of work left to do to get that finished off at the ballot box in 2022. You know, Suzanne mentioned 2A Lobby Day coming up on the 25th of February. We had a big crowd last year. Again, unfortunately, that session was cut short due to COVID, but we're looking to see an even bigger crowd this year. I think we're going to have a lot to work on as citizen lobbyists that day in the Capitol. We've got a pretty big bill coming up that should be introduced either late this week or early next week. We're in the final stages of drafting it right now. Looking forward to sharing that with everybody. A few other bills that we've seen introduced and heard and have been moving a little bit. One of them is House Study Bill 116. I think IFC sent out an alert on that bill, so is NRA, and it's I'm sort of referring to it as PLCAA light. PLCAA being the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. That's at the federal level, and we've seen Democrats Joe Biden and the Beto O'Rourke's talk about repealing this protection. What PLCAA does is prevents citizens from suing manufacturers for the criminal misuse of their product. That's an incredibly important federal protection. You know, as we live in a very litigious society, folks have been trying to sue gun manufacturers out of business for years until that federal law was put into place. So it's very important to have that law at the state level in case it's ever repealed at the federal level. To my understanding, there are no bills currently introduced that would repeal that at the federal level, but it's something that we anticipate happening down the road. That kind of covers state level stuff right now. I did want to touch on one thing that I've seen a lot in the media recently about, I believe it's HR 127 at the federal level. That's the firearm licensing and registration bill, I believe introduced by Sheila Seek. That's kind of been all over the media. You know, from internally at NRA, we have a group of 12 federal lobbyists that are making sure that bill is not going to move. All information right now points to that bill being DOA. We do not anticipate it moving anywhere. There's going to be a lot of lip service paid to gun control at the federal level, but right now, you know, our team's working pretty hard. It's a very narrow majority, as you know, that they have in the U.S. Senate. So I don't believe anything like that is going to move. So again, Dave, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with IFC up in the Capitol. As you mentioned, I've been there 2 weeks already this year, and legislators are fired up and ready to work on some freedom.
Great. Thank you, Scott, very much. And, you know, one of the best things about getting to be the president of IFC is that we got great volunteers, and one of them just sent right over a quick correction to me. I guess it was Sheila Jackson Lee that introduced that. Why am I not surprised? The crazy congresswoman from Texas, if I remember correctly, from a very liberal district in Texas.
Yep.
Anyway, I want to talk about a couple of things here before I get to the chairman's message. The Freedom Amendment. We all been through this, down this road before. Unfortunately, there was a clerical error on a couple of constitutional amendments in the last, prior to the last election. So we've had to go through the whole process twice again. And I'll remind everyone what the process is, in that we have to get it through 2 general assemblies. So it takes 4 years, and then it goes to a vote of the people of Iowa to put a constitutional amendment in place. So one of the most common questions I get is, why do we have to have this when we have a Second Amendment at the federal level? Well, I'll remind everyone, the states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. So what's in the federal Constitution is to protect the people. We at the state level need to protect ourselves from the federal government as these citizens of Iowa. It's important now because 10 years after we got shall issued passed, we have almost 400 or slightly over 400,000 Iowans have permits to carry weapons in this state. It's more than the total number up in Minnesota, and more importantly, it's probably the highest per capita in the state of any state in the United States today. That's 10 years ago. All it would take is an anti-gun Senate and House to come along with a governor willing to sign it, and that could go away tomorrow, along with all of the other efforts of the last 10 years, the omnibus bills, the correcting the Offensive Weapons Act, and getting rid of some of the most ridiculous parts of that legislation. So that's why this amendment is very important. As Scott mentioned, we're going to have some additional bills besides just the Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, Arms and Ammunition, coming up. Once those are finalized and are put out beyond just the draft, we'll announce them, of course, and I'm sure the entire organization will be pretty excited about it. Big news today, the last couple of days, the Iowa Firearms Coalition Political Action Committee's website is up and running, and that's Iowa or IFCPAC.org, IFCPAC.org. It's up and running. You'll find legislative scorecards. A bill monitor tells you where things are and describes them. A vote monitor tells you how people are voting, and you can actually go on a map and look by Senate and House districts as to whether they're green is good for pro-freedom, or if they're red, they're anti-freedom based on the scorecard and how we set it up. And that's really a phenomenal tool. You can also go there if you want to volunteer. That's the best place to go because it comes right to myself and the other members of the executive committee, and we can kind of plug you in. Two of my rules of politics and nonprofit management is you never waste a donor's money, and you be very careful not to waste a volunteer's time, because those are really only the two things any of us can give here. And we want to be, and particularly me as a president, I want to be a very good steward of those things for each and every one of you. And when I ask you to volunteer, you may have talents that we don't know about that you would offer. I'm not going to ask someone to stuff envelopes when they can write computer code better than anybody out there in the world. So as Scott and Suzanne both mentioned, the February 25th, Second Amendment Day, 1:30 p.m. up at the State House in the Rotunda. Like to see a big turnout there like we had last year. I'm sure COVID, the restrictions have essentially been lifted at the state capitol to get in there and see people and walk around and talk, and your legislators are there, they want to see it. The last thing I want to touch on tonight is Michael Ware's our chairman. He had another event he had to be at, a once-a-month meeting that's a very important issue to him, and he couldn't be here with us this evening. We've got 3 other items this week, IFC business meetings we have to get conducted. But Michael asked me to pass on the following message, and I'll read him to quote it. With each Iowa Town Hall event, we become better at offering the membership and beyond truth to carefully consider. With practice comes increased skill. I wrapped up a long series of Sunday school classes I'm teaching at church last Sunday that covered the book of Mark. As I closed that book out, I offered the class the idea of a life of service that was demonstrated by Christ and also asked of us. I thought about it, what it truly means to serve others long after the class had concluded. I pondered the last surrounding selflessness instead of selfishness. I considered, rightly I hope, what it means to serve without the expectation of recognition or accolades. IFC is blessed with a volunteer staff of people spread out all over Iowa. I'm proud to call them friends and colleagues. They work hard, darned hard. It isn't uncommon to catch IFC chatter in our communication circles every single day, regardless of the hour. These volunteers serve others. The IFC deserves credit, so do me a personal favor, and this is from Michael, and give them a thank you when you can. That act of kindness goes a long way. I'll also like you to consider joining them in serving Iowans. IFC needs graphic design artists, social media contributors, writers, and content contributors, gun show and booth workers, and the list doesn't stop there. I assure you that if you have a heart for service, we'll plug you in somewhere you can make a difference. Just reach out to Dave, that would be me, and he'll work with you to find a comfort zone within IFC. As I close the chairman's address, I must mention the word tolerance in an effort to place it before you all for consideration. Tolerance has become largely misunderstood. Take a moment after you listen to this and make a list of all the things in the world you cannot tolerate. Would you tolerate an assault of your spouse? Would you tolerate the beatings of your child? Would you tolerate the theft of your home? Will you notice after you make a long list of all the things intolerable to you, the importance of the items on your list? You'll see as long as you gaze upon your list in retrospect that you're quite passionate about your intolerances, and justifiably so. I cannot tolerate the incremental erosion of our core freedoms and civil liberties here in Iowa. I know you can't either. This is why IFC works so hard. And this, my friends, is tolerance in the right place. I leave you with this quote from Dorothy Sayers on the subject of tolerance. In this world, it is called tolerance, but in hell, it is called despair. The sin that believes in nothing, cares for nothing, seeks to know nothing, interferes with nothing, enjoys nothing, hates nothing, finds purpose in nothing, lives for nothing, that remain alive because there is nothing for which it will die. And that was from Michael Ware, our chairman. And of course, the last quote was from Dorothy Sayers. I'm going to ask Suzanne, I don't see any questions popping up there on the screen. Do we have any that I don't see? Scott, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just see one here from Greg Corey. He asks about the two-way sanctuary state. Greg, we've seen a number of these laws introduced dating back all the way to when Barack Obama was inaugurated in 2009. As a matter of fact, today, Richard Rogers and I were in communication with some House leadership on language about a bill similar to this. So do expect to see something introduced in the next week or two. There are some concerns with how some of the other states have handled these. There was a case in a state a few years back where two folks were charged with federal felonies, now prohibited from owning firearms. So there are some details that need to be ironed out and worked out. But yes, we are in conversations to have a bill introduced at some point in the near future.
I think the key there, Greg, is that we get the, I can see the questions now, is that we get the statute right in the first place. It makes it much easier than to mislead our fellow Iowa citizens into thinking they can ignore something at the federal level. And I don't want to put anyone at risk, while at the same time pushing back on federal overreach on these things. That's one of the reasons the Freedom Amendment, our right to keep and bear arms enshrined in the Iowa Constitution, is so important. And that term strict scrutiny has only been used in a few states' constitutions, and it's very difficult for anti-freedom forces in this country to overcome that level at the state. And it really protects us from an activist Supreme Court or activist district courts or appellate courts in Iowa. So any other questions out there? I don't see any. Suzanne, you have any final comments, or Nathan? Once again, those of you that know me know I like to keep meetings as short as possible. An hour is too long. We're at about 33 minutes right now. So thank you very much. This will be replayed on YouTube. It will be put up live here shortly on the Iowa FC page. Follow us on Facebook, iowafc.org, and of course, the Iowa Firearms Coalition's new PAC website, ifcpac.org. Thanks very much, everybody, and you have a great night.